my speaking after that introduction. And could I start by thanking the honourable members who supported me in this application, to the Backbench Committee for allowing this debate, and to all members from both sides of the House who are participating today. The Holocaust Memorial Day was established in 2001 as a result of a private member's bill by Andrew Dismore. We owe him a debt of gratitude because since that time it has provided our nation with the annual opportunity to pause and reflect on the Holocaust. It's necessary to pause because of the enormity of the Holocaust and the impact on millions of individuals, on families, and indeed on humanity as a whole. It is not something that we can consider lightly. Of course I'll give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Towards the end of last year, I visited Auschwitz with a group of students from my hometown, Newcastle. It was an incredibly challenging and moving visit, but it was made really powerful by the presence of so many young people from the region. So does my honourable friend agree that we also owe a debt to those at the Holocaust Educational Trust that make this visit possible for so many young people, to ensure that we never forget and that we never repeat?
I'm extremely grateful for the intervention, and indeed in a few minutes I'll echo her sentiments very much so. And I also will carry on with the speech and not take any more interventions, because you can see the ferocity with which the Deputy Madam Speaker is clearly encouraging us to make progress. Let me get through and allow other people to speak. The theme of this year's Holocaust Memorial Day is how can life go on? It invites us to consider how our generation can comprehend the Holocaust and act on its lessons, when so few of those who survived it are still remaining with us. We are entering an age where the lived experience of the Second World War and all its horrors is being replaced by one in which we experience it through stories handed down, or through the media, or books or film. Because fewer survivors remain, it's easier to get away with trivialising those events or making light of them. It is not uncommon these days to hear people who are officious being described as having Nazi tendencies, or those in public life mindlessly calling others concentration camp commandants simply for disagreeing with them or feeling that they have strong views. These sorts of comments are extraordinarily irresponsible because they casually draw a line between those with a deliberate attempt by state murder to murder every single member of an ethnicity or a religious group, the first and only time this has happened in history, to a 21st century daily life in a country like Britain. To do this not only trivialises the horrific events of the past, it also makes the job of those who set out with a malicious path of outright Holocaust denial that much easier. For those reasons, I agree completely with the words used just last night by the Secretary of State for Communities, the Right Honourable Member for Bromsgrove, at a Holocaust Educational Trust event. He said the following: "I urge people to push back when people lazily reach for glib comparisons that belittle what happened, calling those we disagree with Nazis, or claiming somebody's actions are just like the Holocaust. Ultimately, we have to be prepared to do that most un-British of things. We have to make a scene. Maybe that'll be in private, maybe in the media, maybe on Twitter. But what's certain is that if we don't speak out against hatred and anti-Semitism, it will become normalised. It will become part of everyday life. And once that happens, the consequences will be tragic." He was speaking as a minister and a Conservative MP. I see we have his predecessor in his place, the Right Honourable Member for Brentwood and Ongar, and I look forward to his comments because I'm sure they will be echoed and elaborated on in his intervention. I stand here as a Labour MP, yet share his sentiments. I look to myself and my own political party for how I, and we, can strive harder to avoid language and actions that are, or are perceived to be, anti-Semitic. We as individuals and as a political party must do more, not only to react swiftly when there is anti-Semitic activity. We should be doing more to prevent it in the first place, because the point of offence is the point at which we know we have failed. Madam Deputy Speaker, the events we remember today are hard to even imagine due to the sheer scale of human suffering it involves. Approximately 6 million Jewish men, women and children were murdered by Nazi Germany and its collaborators during the Second World War. Anti-Semitism was the defining element of Nazi ideology. Persecution of Jews started immediately after Hitler's accession to power in 1933, with policies designed to force emigration. The intensity, ferocity, and brutality of these policies escalated throughout Nazi rule, resulting in mass murder and genocide. It is therefore understandable as to why the Holocaust plays such a painful and powerful role within the modern Jewish culture, both here in Britain and around the world. I am fortunate to have a large and thriving Jewish community in my constituency of Hove and Portslade. We are proudly home to four well-attended and very active synagogues. It is a community that plays a very active role in all aspects of our life in the beautiful city on the south coast, and participating in festivals and hosting a dedicated Remembrance Day event to remember Jews who fell fighting the Nazis as part of the Allied offensive. It is a community that has welcomed me to events and helped me understand Jewish culture and traditions, including the impact and importance of the Holocaust on modern Jewish life. Rabbi Andre and Rabbi Eli in particular have invested many hours in answering my questions and discussing the complex history and modern faces of Judaism, both in my community and further afield. And the great thing about a group that is so welcoming and integrated into the ebb and flow of a community life is that it inspires others to share and to join in. That's why next week I proudly join students and staff at Blatchington Mill, a local school, which is holding an event to mark Holocaust Memorial Day, at which people from across the city will come together to reflect on the meaning of the Holocaust for today's generations. As we approach Holocaust Memorial Day next week, it is appropriate that we, in this house, memorialise these terrible events. The memorial date was chosen to respect the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau by Allied forces on the 27th of January 1945. The death camp sited in the Polish town of Auschwitz has become symbolic of the Holocaust due to the sheer scale of the murder that occurred there. 1.1 million lives were savagely ended at this place. In November last year, I visited Auschwitz with 200 students from across Sussex and my colleague from across the floor, the Honourable Member for Bexhill and Battle. It was under the auspices of the Holocaust Educational Trust. I cannot praise highly enough the thoughtful, engaging and extremely powerful way the Trust guides students through the process of learning and experiencing Auschwitz. Before the visit, students get together in a structured set of seminars to learn the history, the policies and the facts behind the Holocaust, even meeting a Holocaust survivor. They then visit, and finally, after their return, they meet again to talk about the lessons and what it means for them as individuals and us as a society. The past, the present, and the future. These fortunate young people will carry the burden of knowing the full horror meted out to Jews by Nazi Germany. They will also benefit from the wisdom that experience bestows. Two of the students on my visit were from Brighton and Hove, Joe and Matty, from Cardinal Newman and Brighton College schools. They showed the depth of thinking, sensitivity and thoughtfulness that makes me so proud of young people today. Together we saw the cells where people who tried to escape were bricked up and starved to death. The wall against which so many people were shot dead, that the ground beneath could no longer soak up the blood. The desperately cold cabins where people slept, the train tracks that brought people to their deaths in cattle trucks. The sidings where doctors, the people trained to save and enhance life, doctors used their training to decide who was strong enough to work and all the others that should be put to death that very day. For those of us who celebrate the good that humanity is capable of, it is a shattering place to visit. At the end of our tour, guided by the extraordinary staff of the Auschwitz Museum, we gathered at the top of the Auschwitz-Birkenau rail tracks. We stood directly beneath the remains of two former gas chambers where tens of thousands of people lost their lives. There in the darkness, we listened to poetry read by students. Then a rabbi sang prayers which echoed around the still remains of huts, gas chambers, and the forest. The beauty of the prayers for a moment pierced the horror of our location. The symbolism of Jewish prayer being sung in that place was lost on nobody. And then, as we left, leaving behind us lighted candles along the tracks, which from the entrance looked like a blazing pathway of light into the terrible darkness which still hangs over that place. This is the image that remains most strong in my mind, because a blazing pathway of light is what history needs from our generation and those into the future. It will come in the form of remembering, of learning, and of being brave enough to confront hatred. For those of us in public life, it will mean using the power we have to unite and temper at times of anger and confusion, and never to exploit. These are just some of the many lessons I have learned from listening and discussing not only the Holocaust, but its role in shaping modern Jewish life in Hove and across Britain. It is also the moments of reflection like this, in the House of Commons through to the community schools and living rooms across the country, that are so desperately important. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Hear, hear.